Hello, children. Welcome back to the next session. Today, we are going to learn a new prose which is titled as The Collectors. This is a very interesting unit. There are many characters who are narrating the story, which will be very interesting for you. So, let's start our prose. The main characters are Pitty, Carol, Tracy, Glenn, Winnie, Doug, Mr. Hunt, Miss Van, Mrs. Jonas, Mrs. Brown, and Mr. Brown. This is happening in the lonely countryside. The children are out for an adventure walk with the teachers, and it is raining hard. Miss Fanny is telling, "Isn't there somewhere we can shelter?" And Hunt replies, "Not until we get to the village." And Mrs. Jonas says, "How far is that?" "Nearly 3 miles, replies Mr. Hunt. And Down says 3 miles. "I'm soaked," says Tracy. And Miss Pan is saying, "The children are getting very wet." And Mr. Hunt is replying for that, "I can't help that. Well, just have to press on." And Petey says, "Can't we shelter over there, sir?" "Where?" asked by Mr. Hunt. And Petey answers, "There, in that house." And Mr. Hunt is saying, "That's not a house, surely. Hard to see in all the rain." Miss Van is replying, "Of course it is. Try wiping your glasses." Mr. Hunt says, "You're right. Lonely place to choose for a house. It certainly wasn't there when I was here walking last summer." Mrs. Jonas says, "Funny looking place." And Miss Van responded that, "Are we just going to stand here in the downpour gaping at it?" And Down is responding, "Yes. Can we go up there and ask for shelter, sir?" Mr. Hunt is saying, "We can't take all you crowd into a private house. You are." Here we see the lesson is a play with a tinge of comedy. The play demonstrates how aliens try to abduct some humans. So in the last unit, we have planned to go for an excursion. And when they were here, the school children are out for an adventure walk with the teachers, and it is raining hard. And they find a house to shelter. The house looked strange. There were no utensils in the kitchen. And what is happening? Let's see. Inside the kitchen of the house, Mrs. Brown is standing with all the children and teachers. Mr. Brown comes in through the outer door. Mr. Brown is telling, "I have hung up all the wet clothing in the porch. I don't know why I am still holding this walking stick," says Mr. Hunt. And Mr. Brown is responding, "Give it to me. I'll put it outside with the other things." "It's all right. I'll hang it on the back of this chair." And Mrs. Brown says, "Now that we have all introduced ourselves, why don't you children sit down?" Mr. Brown says, "And the grown-ups can come through into the sitting room." And Mrs. Brown says, "You children will be all right here, won't you? There isn't room enough there for everyone." Carol says, "Yes, thanks." Glenn says, "Oh, yes." For that, Petey says, "We will be fine." And Mrs. Jonas says, "Thank you very much for taking us in like this." And Mr. Brown responds, "It's our pleasure." Mrs. Brown says, "There is a fresh pot of tea made in the other room. Would you like a cup?" "I would love one," says Miss Van. Miss Jonas also says, "So would I." Mrs. Brown responding, "Would you like to come through then?" Mr. and Mrs. Brown and the three teachers go out. The children are silent for a moment or two, looking around. Whitey says, "You can't hear any sound of that wind in here." "No, it's terribly quiet, weird," says Tracy. Dawn responded, "I can just hear their voices in the sitting room." Glenn says, "It's cold in here too." Whitey responding, "Maybe we feel cold because we are tired from all that walking. And we did get wet." "No, not just that. It is cold. And empty. This kitchen reminds me of a hospital. Where do they wash up?" says Petey. And Dawn responding, "In the sink." Tracy says, "Or the washing up machine." And Petey responding, "There's nothing like that." And Carol answers, "There is nothing standing about either. No plates, no pots and pans, things like that." And Dawn says, "They're put away in cupboards." And Wiley opens the cupboard near the back door and says, "This one is quite empty." And Dawn says, "Don't go walking about, Wiley." And Petey opens the fridge door. There is nothing at all in this fridge, and the light's not on. It's not even working. And Tracy says, "Leave things alone, you two. It's cheeky to snoop besides. They might come in and catch you." And Carol says, "I thought there was something a bit strange about Mr. and Mrs. Brown." And Petey says, "Funny, you should say that. So did I." Glenn says, "Perhaps they are crooks. This is their hideout." And Tracy says, "They would hardly have let us in if they were crooks, would they?" "No, that's silly," says Dawn. And Carol says, "Maybe we ought to have gone on walking to the village." Dawn says, "We would have got drenched." And Mrs. Brown comes back into the room, says, "All right here, good." And she notices the partly open cupboard door. "Oh, were you looking for something in that cupboard?" And Dawn said it was whining. He was being nosy. Mrs. Brown says, "I see." She closed the door, looking at Whining. And Whiny says, "I did not mean that any harm. We just wondered where you put your plates and things." Mrs. Brown responded, "I would rather you did not touch anything. We have just moved in and have not had time to sort things out. That's why this place looks rather deserted." "We only wanted," says Petey. And Mrs. Brown says, "Yes. Well, would you all like a drink?" Tracy and Glenn says, "We would like to." And Mrs. Brown says, "Will orange juice be all right?" "Yes, please," says Whiny. Dawn says, "Fine, thanks." The other note, Mrs. Brown says, "Good, and remember, Please leave these cupboards alone. Winnie says, we will. Kitty responds, don't worry, Mrs. Brown. Says Mrs. Brown. And she looks at the closed doors of a larger cupboard on the opposite side wall. To remember that, I'll go and get those drinks. And she goes out. Carol says, did you see her hand? No. What? Asked by Dot. When she closed that cupboard door, she has 7 fingers on both hands. I looked, says Carol, looking at Mrs. Brown's hand. Carol responded in this way. Tracy says, oh, horrid. And Pitty says, I was watching her eyes. Glenn says, yes, as far as I could see, they were all one color. They did not have any black sort of centers. Winnie says, God, she could be something weird like a vampire. What do you mean by vampire? Vampire means a dead person that leaves their grave at night to drink the blood of living people, or blood-sucking bat found mainly in tropical America. And next we see that Tracy says, oh, shut up. Don says, yes, shut up. You are making all this up to scare us. Scare means frightening. Pitty says, no, we are not. And Tracy says, I don't want to stay here. And Winnie also says, I'll tell you something, that rain has changed to thick fog outside. I have been watching it. Yes, you can't see anything out of that window, says Glenn. And Carol responds, no, I hope it does not mean we are going to have to stay here all night. Stay here all night? Not me, says Tracy. And Dawn says, I don't fancy that either. Let's go. Glenn says, we can just slide off. Pitty says, I'll go and tell Mr. Hunt and the others how we feel. And he goes out. And Winnie says, it is all a bit mysterious. I wonder what's in that other cupboard. And Dawn says, leave it alone. Tracy says, if she catches you, she'll be mad. Winnie says, she won't catch me. And he opens the cupboard door. Behind it are dials, digital readouts, colored lights, and a mass of other electronic equipment. And what on earth is all that doing there? Asked by Glenn. Winnie says, is it some kind of computer? Carol responds, those things, are they figures or words? Glenn says, some kind of foreign language. Tracy says, look at all those lights. It's real space age stuff, said by Dar. Glenn says, what could it be for? Spying? You think so? Close the door. Someone's coming, says Carol. They found the inmates, Mr. and Mrs. Brown, too strange. And Mrs. Brown had 7 fingers and strange eyes. Mrs. Brown insists the children not to open the cupboard in the kitchen. Winnie is opening the cupboard and finds the dials, digital readouts, colored lights, and a mass of other electronic equipment. And the children find their teachers in a condition as if drugged. And they find the behavior of Mr. and Mrs. Brown to be very strange. The children get frightened and Winnie tries to open the back door to get out from there. He finds it locked and they try to open windows, try to break the glass panes but could not do it. So the continuation will be learned in the next session.